Lanka. Good to see you.
Thank you for having me.
So this long-awaited deal with the IMF, is this savior or band-aid for the situation in Sri Lanka?
Well, for now, almost 2 years, a lot of analysts have been calling for this IMF agreement. But at the same time, this is Sri Lanka's 17th IMF agreement. We've already had 16 since 1965. And the question remains as to why this would be that much different. Sri Lanka's external debt on which it had defaulted amounts to over 50 billion US dollars. But the IMF agreement has only allocated 2.9 billion US dollars over a 4-year period. So what the policymakers hope is that with this agreement, Sri Lanka would be able to again go and borrow in the capital markets as well as from other donors. But whether that would be possible, given the current global conditions where interest rates are being raised by central banks around the world, is a big question.
Yeah.
The other point of this is that people came out and protested because the huge rise in cost of living and shortages. And already the last few months, Sri Lanka has been implementing the IMF recommendations even before this agreement, leading to this kind of suffering due to austerity. And whether people will be willing to take on more of that in the months ahead is to be watched, or whether there would be another wave of protests. And all signs are that the instability is likely to continue.
And as always, any deal with the IMF comes with things that the receiving country has to do. In this case, it's going to be economic reforms. What among those do you see as more crucial for Sri Lanka, and will they be able to do it?
Well, from the IMF's perspective, first of all, even for this 2.9 billion rupees to be dispersed by its executive board, they have asked that Sri Lanka first restructure its debt with its creditors, which itself is going to be a difficult process because there are a range of creditors from mutual funds and hedge funds to actors like China and Japan. So that has to be the first step. And then, of course, Sri Lanka has to bring down its fiscal deficit, and whether it can raise its revenues to a point where it can reduce the fiscal deficit and by 2024 going to a primary surplus, primary budget surplus is a big question. Now, all of this might mean huge amount of suffering for the people, and whether the people will take that from this government, because there really is little room to provide much needed relief. This is the worst crisis. Even according to the IMF, Sri Lanka's economy could shrink by 8.7%, negative 8.7% GDP growth this year. So it's very difficult times, and I think it's going to be a very challenging time. We may be back next year again negotiating for more with the IMF or other actors.
Very good points, Ahilan. That's why we're so happy to have you on our show. Thanks for joining us.